Hello, and thank you for coming to the presentation of my hemp company by any other name. And I am the CEO, MJ Anders. So real quick, first and foremost, I want to go over cannabis versus industrial hemp. A lot of people see it as cannabis or industrial hemp, but in fact, both of them come from the cannabis plant. Cannabis is the genus of the plant, and it just depends on which variation of cannabis you use as to what you'll yield. So when we're talking industrial hemp, generally we're looking at the Cannabis stevia L plant. But there are actually three types of cannabis. You have Cannabis stevia L, which is used in industrial. It's known for being good for pain relief and anxiety. There's Cannabis indica, which is used for stress relief and insomnia with higher levels of CBD and some THC in it. And then there's Cannabis ruderalis, which is high in THC and is used in more intense things like cancer treatments. And off to the side here you can see there's a little bit of a breakdown. So the industrial hemp plant that we look at is this Cannabis stevia. It grows taller, produces more of those plant fibers. It's very leafy and can generally be grown in closer proximity to one another. And this produces a lot of the fibers and some of the leaves needed for other products. And then you have indica right next to it. You can see this one looks much more bushier. It's because it's fuller leaves and it's fuller buds or flowers. The buds and flowers are what are used to process to make the CBD oils. This is where we're finding the THC. So that is what we need to grow in order to get the CBD and THC for the products. And these usually are grown in bigger spaces so they can be spread out a little bit, because the more you spread them out, the more buds you'll get out of the plant. And the third one we have here is the ruderalis plant. And this one you can see is much smaller than the other two. It does produce those flowers and those buds. And that is because it's higher in a THC content. The buds are much smaller. It's harder to get that purer THC out of them. So they're much more concentrated in a smaller form. So from there, what can be made from Cannabis stevia? There's actually lots of options. You can make hemp seed oil. You can do CBD, you can get textiles out of it, you can get feed for animals, and of course it's got recreational purposes depending on its use and processing. There are over 35,000 products that can be made with hemp, so it's a pretty wide range use of product. So from there we'll talk about my company, which is called By Any Other Name. Which is a reference to Romeo and Juliet. When using the phrase, a rose by any other name would smell sweet, they're talking about how it really didn't matter what its name was or where it came from. It was still good. It was still helpful. And that's kind of the idea behind the company, is to produce a product that is, you're getting all the benefits from hemp and CBD, but it's not necessarily in the name. So it helps kind of fight that stigma a little bit about how, hemp means marijuana and it's a drug. Some recreational purposes, it is still considered a drug, especially to the government. However, I chose it to kind of move away from that negative stigma that it has in media. And for that, we chose to go with names from Romeo and Juliet. So the first one we have is Nightshade. That one is our CBD product. Focused more towards people with, insomnia or anxiety. This product is, of course, a CBD product. So it's produced by using a CO2 extraction on the leaves and buds to get that oil out, and then we infuse it into, gummies or other treats. And we went with Nightshade for this one because the berries that Juliet ingests in the play to fake her own death, which really just put her to sleep, was the nightshade berry. And moving on from there, sticking with our themes, we went with Ships in the Night for our hemp oil. We went with that name because it's a famous painting, The Ships in the Night, about two which is an oil painting about two ships that meet to never meet again, which was created in reference to Romeo and Juliet as the two passing ships that met, only to never be able to meet again because they met a bad fate. So with that name on our hemp oil, that one is, once again, we use our CO2 press to get the oils out of the seeds. And that one we actually double with the use of the leftover byproducts of it being used as, feed or fertilizer out in the fields, just to, continue to recycle the products. Our third one we have listed here is Bright Angel, and that one is a multi-purpose cloth in reference to the scene where Romeo calls Juliet a bright angel for appearing in just a simple white dress. And it's just that simple. It's, taking the fibers, processing them into cloths, having them, be just a multi-purpose cloth, simple as that. You can change the percentage of hemp fiber in it depending on how soft you want it to be by mixing it with cotton and such. And then we do also offer a recreational option, which is our Holy Palmers, which, depending on the state you're from, is or is not legal. But with that, when you go to, creating your hemp and where you're getting it from, you really have two different options. You can do greenhouses versus outdoors, and it really just depends on what you're hoping to grow. So like spacing wise, things like the cannabis stevia, where you're looking usually generally just for the fibers from the plant, they can grow close together. So they're nice and tall stalks, so you're getting lots of fibers out of them. And in that, you generally use it as an outdoor plant because it doesn't need to be maintained nearly as much. You can also grow your other ones, your indica and such, outside as well. You just have to space them farther out. But if you choose to grow them in a greenhouse, you're able to, focus more on, the different qualities that the product holds. So you're able to manipulate it, make sure it's growing at the right rate and the right, percentage of THC to keep it legal. So from there, you obviously start by harvesting your product. First and foremost, you have your harvesters, something similar to the one envisioned here, to help cut down the products, and then most of them are sent to be dried out. Once they're dried, you can take them to the next process, which in oils are extraction. You can do a CO2 oil, which is what my company chooses to go with. You can do an ethanol, and then off to late stage production, whether it be turning it into a gummy or weaving it into fibers, wherever it needs to go from there. Now, I hail from New York State, so local legislation. The government does have it listed as a drug still, but New York State has made it legal. In order to grow it, though, you do have to have a special grower's license. And that grower's license, you have to get approval from the state. And from that, there is also monitoring, like they monitor for the CBD/THC levels, which have to maintain below a 0.3%. And the other part of that is you also have to have a seller's license. So you may be able to grow it, but to sell it also as a product, you have to have the other license as well. So it is monitored still by the state government, just not as highly as it is monitored by the federal government. And of course, with that, there are challenges. So cost is always a challenge. Startups cost a lot more money than you'd think. Equipment is very expensive because you have to have specialized equipment to break down the stalks without breaking down the machinery. The hardy plants that they are tend to add a lot of wear and tear to the machinery that we use to cut it down. And then, of course, loans as well, because it is still considered a drug by the federal government. There are a lot of financial institutions that won't give you, loans or anything, so you have to work on, procuring other funds, whether it be using it as a co-op or having grants to process this. And then, of course, getting that license is a process to get the license. You have to get approved by the state, a bunch of different background tests. And then, of course, Mother Nature, the weather, because if the weather is not on your side, growing it can be difficult if you're doing it outdoors. And then, of course, what makes us different than the other shops. We aim to reduce waste. We try to reuse the excess products, such as the leftover after pressing the oils and turning it into feed or fertilizer to give it back to the land. We're co-op with our employees, so that means each of the employees own part of the company. It helps us, instill a want for it to go well, for it to prosper, and it gives it a legacy so that it's not just on us as the owner. It instills a want for this to continue. And then we also partner with local groups to help, make the products in their end form, and to also bring in other pieces like cotton or whatever to help build the products itself. So thank you for coming to my presentation. I hope this answered some questions for you. Here I do have listed my references to anything that I've stated in the PowerPoint, and I hope you have an excellent day.